Hi, I'm Ken. Today we're going to do something a little simpler. Not every episode I do has to be a deep dive into something complicated. Today we're going to take a look at the 1938 US presidential issues. These are the stamp designs for this series. Actually, these are my stamps. I have all of them mint except for the four highest values. As of 2017, the total catalog for this page is just $35.50. To add mint copies of the last four stamps, that would cost an extra $115, and that's a big jump. That said, catalog value isn't real. On eBay, I've seen the whole set, mint, sell for less than $20. Not too bad. These stamps came out in 1938, replacing the Fourth Bureau issues of 1922. These stamps. The frames on these Fourth Bureau stamps are the kind of fancy borders you might expect on paper money or certificates, with ornate frames and other engraving flair. But these newer issues are a big departure from those earlier designs, much simpler. They get dinged as a less attractive design, but I really like these stamps. These stamps are also the first US stamps designed by a woman, Elaine Ralston. Elaine entered the Post Office Department-sponsored competition for a new presidential series with her Washington design, winning $500 for her submission. That's about the same as $11,000 today. While these stamps are called the presidential issues, they're known to collectors as the Prexies. Prexie is an old-fashioned slang for a president, although typically for a college or university president, but here we are, the Prexies. I keep calling these the presidential issues, but there are three stamps that break that pattern. The first of these features Ben Franklin at 1/2 cent. As a young collector, I was always fascinated by the half-cent stamp. How do you buy one, I wondered? How do they give you change? Did you have to buy two at a time? The things kids worry about. Anyway, at the time these came out, the third-class postage rate, the so-called greeting card rate, was 1.5 cents, half the first-class rate. This stamp plus the 1-cent Washington stamp covered that rate. Ben Franklin had long had the honor of being the first stamp in a new series, in recognition of him being the first postmaster of the U.S. So he got this first stamp design too. The second unusual stamp is Martha Washington on the 1.5 cent stamp. This rate also covered the merchandise rate up to 2 ounces. Finally, this 4.5 cent features the White House, home of the U.S. president. It covered 3 times the merchandise rate, up to 6 ounces, and of course 2 times the merchandise rate was covered by the regular first-class stamp, the 3-cent Jefferson. The common theme to these stamps is that half-cent value. All the stamps with half-cent values don't feature a president. The rest of the stamps in this series feature a U.S. president, starting with George Washington, the first president, on the 1-cent stamp, followed by John Adams, the second president, on the 2-cent stamp, and Thomas Jefferson, the third, on the 3-cent stamp. See the pattern? Traditionally, George Washington had the honor of being on the stamp of the then first-class postage rate, but there was a change in this series. These stamps were released in presidential order, and up to the 22-cent denomination, the value of the stamp is the same as the person's place in the presidency. So Grover Cleveland, the president on the 22-cent stamp, was the 22nd president. But look at that 22-cent stamp. Notice anything different about this design? There are 2 date ranges on this stamp, 1885 to 1889 and 1893 to 1897. Grover Cleveland was president twice, but not consecutively. So he was the 22nd president. Then Benjamin Harrison was the 23rd president. That's him on the 24-cent stamp. And then Grover Cleveland was the president again, the 24th. He was both the 22nd and 24th president. The next in the series is William McKinley, the 25th president, there on the 25-cent stamp. Appropriate for sure, but it doesn't really restart the pattern. You'll notice that the denominations start to jump after that. You'll also notice that the design changes for the dollar value stamps and that those stamps are a little wider than the others. That's because the last 3 stamps are flat plate printed and truly are about a millimeter wider than the others, which are rotary press printed. But don't think that all the other stamp designs are uniform. They're not. These are the various design types of the Prexies. The first is our friend Ben, who doesn't have a date. Neither does Martha Washington nor the White House stamp. And obviously the design of the White House stamp is different from all the others. Except for the number font and the solid background, it's actually hard to see the family resemblance. And of course the design of the dollar value stamps is different. But what's going on with the other 3? The 1 cent Washington has a solid background with no frame. The 10-cent John Tyler has a single frame line. There's a single frame line for all the stamps from 10 to 19 cents. The 20-cent James Garfield stamp has a double-line frame. That's true for all the stamps from 20 to 25 cents. It's like the number of lines indicates the tens place of the denomination. So what would you expect the 30 and 50-cent stamps to look like? Unfortunately, no. They also have just 2 frame lines. It's fun to imagine, though. Here's what I think they would look like if they had all those frame lines. Actually, they don't look that bad. I could have been a stamp designer. This stamp set was proposed by Franklin Roosevelt, who was a stamp collector himself. The Prexies stamp series was to feature all the deceased U.S. presidents. That left out Roosevelt himself, of course, but also one other then living president, Herbert Hoover. That's Hoover on the left. Roosevelt was a Democrat and had beaten Hoover, a Republican, to win the presidency. It's kind of convenient that including just the deceased presidents left out his one-time rival. Let's put a pin in that for a moment. I want to take a break and share some stamps that Chris sent me. Chris runs a fantastic YouTube channel called Chris Loves Stamps. I put a link below to his site. He's currently running a series on collecting stamps on a budget, starting with absolutely nothing except access to the internet. I watched the first few episodes and it reminds me of my early stamp journey, and it inspires joy at how much fun there is to sorting through inexpensive stamps that are new to you. I sent Chris off a packet of stamps that I thought he would enjoy. In return, he asked what he might be able to send back to me. I usually say when people ask that I love to get definitive issues from their home country. And Chris is from the Netherlands, so he did not disappoint in what he sent. Let's take a look at them. Okay, so Chris sent along these stamps in this nice envelope. I love it when people send, especially when stamp collectors send envelopes that have stamps on them, real stamps on them, as opposed to printing. So these are some lovely stamps from the Netherlands, including these two regular issues, but look at this beautiful cow. Anyway, I love those. Let's see what Chris sent along. I've already taken a look at some of these in here, and I won't go over them in complete detail. He sent a little packet of definitive stamps. We'll look at those in just a second. Let me set those aside for now. He sent a note that I won't read on air, and he sent along two packets of definitive issues. These are a lot of definitive issues from Luxembourg and from Netherlands, and even some stamps from Germany right here. So let's take a look at these. Chris, when he reached out, he mentioned that he wanted to be careful not to send me too many duplicates and stamps that would fit into my collection. Chris, you hit it out of the park with this. Let's start by looking at my Luxembourg pages as they stand. So I'm going to just turn to that page. These are my stamps from I'll get that centered in the page here. These are my stamps from Luxembourg. This is all the definitive issues I have from Luxembourg, so not a very complete set. When I pull up the first packet you sent, I'll get that a little closer in. All the stamps on this first line are from Luxembourg, and in fact, these stamps right here, this series with the woman in the circle, is this series right here for me. I've got one of these, and look at all these that Chris sent, including one that's overprinted, surcharged for the new value. And this is a stamp of a king. I've got the 5 franc version of it. This is the 8 franc version of it. So hit it out of the park with those Luxembourg stamps. And then when I switch to the other pile, these stamps here are Luxembourg stamps. I think it's really interesting that both for Luxembourg and for the Netherlands, the Queen is the prominent monarch on these stamps. I think that's really nice. Anyway, these stamps right here from Luxembourg are this series, I think, right here, and this series right here. And I just have a few of these here. And then finally, these on the bottom, all these down here, is this series continued. And this series right here is this one. I have one stamp from that series. There's 2 stamps from this series. I just have the one, and a whole bunch on this series right here. And again, I have just the one in that series. So Luxembourg, knocked out of the park. Let's move on to the German section. I'll set this aside. This is my German stamps that are from the time period that Chris sent some stamps. The only stamp I have on this page in this series is this one flower stamp. Chris sent along, I don't know if you could see, he sent along all these different flower stamps. So this is really going to fill out this page of flower stamps. And I think these stamps are just gorgeous. So anyway, Chris, nice on the German stamps. And then let's move over to the Netherlands stamps that Chris sent along. Put this aside. This is my album of Netherlands stamps. Let's turn to this page. I'm doing a little bit better on Netherlands stamps. Chris sent along some more modern Netherlands stamps that start on the second page. On my first page, I have a bunch of these, including right down here. I don't know if you can see these. There's a set of stamps from the Netherlands called the seagull stamps. This always looks like a cat to me. I don't know why, but people call these seagull stamps. There is a seagull up at the top. There's a number of different versions of these seagull stamps. And up here at the top, Chris sent along a whole bunch of those seagull stamps. They're right up in here and down here. And I imagine, I haven't sorted these out yet, but I imagine that some of them are from this first series and some are from the second series. I don't have all of these yet, and I'm sure that we're going to fill out some stamps in that series. The next one here is this series on the bottom featuring another queen. That's the series right there. The queen on this set has some kind of curlicue designs on the edge. That's this series down here. Again, I don't have them all, but I have many of them. Chris sent along a number of these, and I'm sure that's going to fill out some of those. Let's turn the page here. This is my third and final page of Netherlands stamps. And for this page, we've got a bunch of these stamps with the square frame on them. That's these right here. I do have most of these, and that's okay. And also these stamps with a different queen image and more frills on the edge. That's this series here at the top. I have a lot of these, but not all of these. And again, I'm sure that these are going to fill out this set almost to completion would be my guess. Finally, I want to just show you here at the bottom are these four stamps I have of the Queen, much more modern stamps of the Queen. And what Chris sent along was a packet that has all these different images of the Queen with the colored background and these without a colored background. So I have 3 with the colored background and 1 with the white background. And this is what Chris sent along. This is just stunning to me. Honestly, these are some of the most beautiful stamps I've ever seen. And especially when you see them all lined up here together in these pastel colors. It's like an Easter gift sent from the Netherlands. Anyway, these are just beautiful stamps. Fills out stamps that it would be almost impossible for me to get without having someone local who was willing to send those to me. So anyway, Chris, these are just fantastic. Let me just point out that Chris also sent this packet here, and I have gone through these to some extent. They're not nearly as well organized as the ones in the other packet, but you can just see all these other stamps in here that are various Netherlands sets. Some of these larger queens that'll fill out some spaces. We've got some of these postage due stamps in here. We've got a series that I literally have none of that are definitive issues. Again, I wouldn't be able to get those at all without the kindness of someone like Chris sending me off stamps. Some of these number issues that I have very few of. These are just fantastic. So anyway, Chris, I love these. Thank you, Chris, for sending along these wonderful stamps. You can see you've made a huge impact on my collection. Now back to the Prexies. So Hoover was Roosevelt's political rival, a Republican to his Democrat, and they were the only 2 presidents left out of this series. Roosevelt leaving himself out of the series seems appropriate. The U.S. doesn't put our leader on our stamps, but leaving off Hoover just seems mean. Well, except that it wasn't any kind of statement at all. At the time, the US had a rule that no living person should be honored on currency or postage stamps. For stamps, the rule was that a person had to be dead for 10 years before being honored on a postage stamp. There was an exception for presidents, but that exception was that the president could be on a stamp the year after his death. So by the rule, Hoover wasn't eligible to be honored on a stamp at that time. No slight intended. That said, there have been living people on US stamps. This is the first example I'm aware of. No, Columbus wasn't alive when this stamp was issued. This 10-cent Columbian was based off this mural by Luigi Gregori that was painted for the University of Notre Dame in Indiana in the 1880s. Nobody represented in this painting was still alive when the Columbian stamps were issued either, but artists often use models, and at the time this was painted there was no definitive image of what Columbus looked like. So Gregori used the president of the university, Thomas Walsh, as his model for Columbus. Other members of the Notre Dame community and even Gregori himself served as models for other people in this mural. This stamp was issued in January of 1893. Thomas Walsh passed away in July of that same year, but he was still alive when the stamp was issued. So in a way, this US stamp features a living person, the first known so far. I found this stamp on a list of US stamps with living people on them, compiled by John Hotchner. John is a noted philatelist, writer for Linz, and one-time member of the Citizens Stamp Advisory Committee. So far, John's list includes over 100 US stamps with an image of a living person. Although to be fair, the wording of the rule is that the stamp shouldn't honor a living person. You might say that the model on the stamp is not being honored, a technicality, but it doesn't break the rule. I've put a copy of John's most recent list on my blog. There's a link in the summary below. To get the most recent copy, send John an email or a letter. I've put his contact information below and on my blog entry. John also asked me to ask you to let him know if you learn of any other living people that have shown up on US stamps. He's always looking to improve his list. Here are some other US stamps that have featured living people on them. The original rule was to wait 10 years after someone had passed to honor them, but after 2007 that rule changed to 5 years. That seems like a good change. But in 2011, the post office announced that they would accept living subjects to be honored on stamps. That doesn't seem like such a good idea to me, but to this date no living person has actually been so honored. Apparently the Post Office Department was asserting its right to not be bound by the same rules as the Treasury Department, even if they didn't choose to exercise that right. If you go to the Citizens Stamp Advisory Committee website, you'll find a guideline that reads, "As of January 2018, no living person will be honored on a stamp. Deceased individuals will be honored no earlier than 3 years after his or her death." There's 2 key points here. First, the guideline has been reduced again from 5 to 3 years. I can't complain about that, fine. But second, the wording is careful to retain the Post Office Department's right to do whatever they want. This is a guideline, not a rule. The wording is that they won't honor someone, not that they can't honor someone. They could change that any time they want to, although I for one hope they don't start honoring living people. Enough of living people on stamps. Let's get back to the Prexies. This is my second page of Prexie stamps. These are the coil versions of these stamps. There are 9 different vertical coil stamps, the first 2 rows, and there are 4 different horizontal coil stamps, the last row. As far as the Scott catalog is concerned, that's all the major single stamp catalog numbers there are for these stamps. But I'm learning there's one other format for these stamps. They also came out in booklet panes with covers that look like this. The Scott catalog recognizes the booklet panes with catalog numbers, minor catalog numbers. The 1 set booklet pane is Scott 804B, lowercase b for the minor catalog number. The 2 cent is 806B, and the 3 cent is 807A. Yes, A, not B. The singles by themselves don't have catalog numbers, which I find annoyingly inconsistent. Modern issues that came out in sheet, coil, and booklet pane styles all got their own catalog numbers. Major catalog numbers even, but not these. At some point Scott made a change to how they cataloged issues, but never went back to change how they treated older issues. I guess it was too hard to change how the world collected these issues, or to go back and change how all the old albums listed them. Anyway, for newer issues, we tend to collect sheet, coil, and booklet pane versions of each stamp design. People don't collect the booklet pane versions of these stamps as a rule. Instead, they collect just the booklet pane singles. But with these older Prexies, people tend to shun the booklet pane versions as stamps with incomplete perforations, one flat side, making singles of these stamps a little harder to find, although not that hard. When I was researching this video, I realized these booklet stamps existed, so I searched through my duplicates and found these copies. These are 3-corner versions of the booklet singles. I'm going to add a page for them and give them the respect they deserve in my collection. I may go as far as to look for all the pane position, 2 sides and 2 corners for each type. We'll see. I've always loved this set. When I was a kid, this was the oldest set that I could buy mint copies of, 1 or 2 at a time, and that was always fun for me. As an adult, it's the oldest set that I could imagine having an entire mint set of. Well, maybe someday, so we'll see about that. Since I finished this recording and the script for this set, I was able to find and buy these 3 booklet pane versions of these stamps, and so I'm really happy with these used copies. These are used copies. I like them, I think, better than I would mint copies of them, so I'm really happy to add these to my collection. We're certainly going to have to add a new page to this collection for these stamps. And I really love that airplane cancel up in the top of that 1 cent panel. Anyway, I enjoy these a lot.